We have time for one more question before we move to the candidates' closing statements. And this question asks you for your opinion of the current 3 strikes law. And I think you can speak to it personally or as law or the impacts that it has on the system. And we'll begin with Mr. Spielbauer.
Well, the long and short of the 3 strikes law, it's there. It's going to be there for a long time. But I think that judges need to have the discretion as to whether or not they should apply the law or not. And, you know, each case comes before you can have a case in which the DA can charge a case to a certain, charge a particular crime. They can overcharge, they can charge appropriately, or a plea bargain can be reached. But I think that a judge has to take into account the circumstances surrounding the crime, but also take into account the circumstances surrounding the defendant. And we kind of roll back to the question that was brought up previously about abused children and how they end up in state prison. In my work as a defense attorney, I've seen exactly that, where I had a defendant who had previously committed a very serious crime, but he had one of the most horrific childhoods I'd ever seen. So when he came back up for possession of some methamphetamine because he did something stupid in a JCPenney store, he was a 3 strikes candidate, and he went away for life. And I think that a judge needs to take into account the circumstances surrounding not only the current offense, the underlying offense, but also the circumstances of the defendant. So the short answer to the question is the judge needs to have discretion.
Thank you. Ms. Alloggiamento.
The 3 strikes law is the current law, and of course, again, as judges, we would be required to follow the law. But what a lot of people don't understand is the full ramifications of the law, or the fact that there is discretion built into the law, and that is appropriate so that people make the right decisions when either charging those cases or ruling on those cases. And what I think you want is a judge who has strong familiarity with those cases and has tried those cases to understand that. In 3 strikes law, we are talking about serious and violent felonies, and when it comes to the 3rd strike and making the decision, judges do have some discretion. They have discretion to strike a strike. It's called a Romero motion. And for a judge to look at that, they must consider a number of factors, and they're going to consider what were the original felonies that led them to this. Is this someone who, again, is going to victimize other people in our society to the extent that we do need to remove them from society? Or are there unique circumstances to the crime? Maybe it was so long ago, maybe it was a juvenile strike, that it's really not appropriate to remove them from society. So again, what you want is a judge who has seen a number of these cases, has practiced in that, and can put it within the context of proper framework to make those decisions, because judges do have discretion in that case. And so I think that we are required to follow the law, that it is appropriate that judges have discretion within that law.
Thank you. Mr. Cumors.
Thank you. Well, I certainly can agree with Ms. Alloggiamento on the process. The judge's role in it, as I understand it, is that the judge has discretion to remove a prior to affect the outcome on proper motion from counsel. And when you're presented with a motion like that, you have to look at the prior convictions, the age of the prior convictions, the nature of the prior convictions, and so forth, and make a decision based on the evidence and the law. And of course, like all of us have said, we plan to follow the law. We will follow the law. The one thing I will say is that I will always be thinking about the victim and potential future victims, because I think that the role of the judge, we're dealing at that point in the process, you're dealing with someone that's been convicted, and convicted more than once by a jury of his peers of something quite serious. So it's completely appropriate, and what my intention would be to be focused on potential future victims and the duty to protect the community while deciding under the law and facts. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Zecher?
I think the 3 strikes law was passed because of the public's frustration with the criminal justice system. And some of the problem that we're faced with is that when a person commits a crime, that's one time. We would hope that that person would learn from his or her mistakes and move on to a crime-free life. But we have repeat offenders and people who come back and do it again the second time. And then the public says, okay, the third time, I think we're done with it. I think that the three strikes law was in direct response to the public's need to feel that it had some control over the criminal justice system. I do believe that judges are given enough discretion under the current three strikes law to ensure that a truly bad result does not occur. I also think that the law has given the voice to victims in a way which is good, which is that we say, we'll give you once, we'll give you twice, but the third time, we're just not going to tolerate it. So it is not a law which does not give chances. It is a law which sets limits and boundaries, and I believe that's really what the public was trying to accomplish.
Ms. McCracken.
So you all probably recall that the three strikes law was enacted in part because of the kidnapping and murder of Polly Klaas by Richard Allen Davis, and the public's outrage that if that three strikes law had been in place before, then Richard Allen Davis wouldn't have had the opportunity to kidnap and murder Polly Klaas. And so the three strikes law has been very effective at incarcerating career criminals who have committed serious or violent felonies. That's what the law is directed to. But we discovered after the law was enacted that it also included in its broad net people who might have committed less serious offenses. They had serious offenses way far back in their background, but now after a long period of rehabilitation, stole a slice of pizza or got caught up in some drug offense or something like that. And so the law was changed to allow judges discretion. I served on the Three Strikes Committee as the chief trial deputy in our office, and so I was charged with the responsibility of deciding, is this a case that we should apply three strikes law, or is this a case where we should not apply the law? And the district attorney is given that obligation, and I was charged with that responsibility in our office. And so those are the same factors that a judge would decide. When do we apply it fairly to protect the public and protect victims? And when do we apply it and say, now we should not use it in this case because it's not appropriate given who the defendant is and the nature of his crime? And so I think that we need judges who have experience in studying those issues and a lot of experience in studying those issues and do so fairly.
Thank you. Mr. Pitsker?
This is actually a subject that I'm well qualified to talk about. I told you earlier that I had spent 7 years doing gang and career criminal cases. Well, career criminal cases are mainly three-strike cases. I'm the one who gets the cases for trial after Ms. McCracken and her teams decide which case goes forward as a three-strike case and which case gets reduced. I will not give you my personal opinion on the three strikes law. However, I will tell you that the DA's office considers it a very valuable tool, and Ms. McCracken was correct that since the three-strike law went into effect, there has been a very, very significant reduction in serious crime because those criminals have been off the streets. Now, with that said, I have to point out to you that 50% of all cases that come through the office that are eligible to be charged as three-strike cases and subject to life have been reduced by Ms. McCracken's team. 50% of them don't even get charged, well, they get charged but get reduced. So they don't, 50% off the top don't have to worry about going to prison for life. The other 50% goes to people like me to prosecute those cases. We go through and we prosecute them. Some go to jury trial. Most of them get settled by the judge. Of that 50%, a majority of them are reduced by the judge so that they're not subject to life imprisonment. So the net effect in Santa Clara County is less than 10% of all the people who could have been sentenced to life are actually even sentenced. So all I can say is that in Santa Clara County, the three-strike law is applied very carefully, and there's a lot of discretion used, and only the really serious people get shipped for life. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.